Well, welcome everyone. This has been a long anticipated day, the day when the book was finally concluded and we could present the history of the 50 years of this community, this parish. I think most of you know me, but if you don't, I'm El Mano Costa. I think I was asked to do this because I can do it in Portuguese for the next group and do it in English as well. So we're going to get going on this, starting with our pastor, Father Larry, who has been the administrator since June of 2023. He gets the distinction of being our first pastor who was actually raised in this community. Here, he is the son of, you guys know, Lucio and Conceição Machado. I was honored to be present here when he said his first Mass in June of 2019, after he was ordained as a priest. He was, before that, parochial vicar at the Cathedral of the Annunciation in Stockton for 3 years. And he would, during that time, would come here very often to celebrate the Latin Mass. He studied for 5 years at the Pontifical Gregorian University of the Holy Cross in Rome, specializing in liturgical theology. Now you may all applaud. Please welcome Father Larry.
I'm a little bit taller than Elman, so I'll have to adjust here. Just a word of welcome to all of you who are here this morning for this great celebration. I know that this is a project that's been already several years in the making, so finally we have this joy of releasing our book that commemorates the 50 years of our parish community. We just celebrated Thanksgiving just a couple days ago with our families, and hopefully we had a time during the past couple days to just recognize all of the gifts that God gives us, so many things that we can be grateful for. And I think among those are our parish community. Our parish community feeds us in so many ways, in word and sacrament. It's where we have many friends. All of you are here this morning because this parish is of great importance to you, and so we can recognize all of those blessings that God gives us, especially through our parish, how God gives us the Eucharist, how God gives us the sacrament of penance, opportunities for fellowship, and also being a Portuguese parish, also so many opportunities to celebrate our, for many of us, our cultural heritage, our traditions, our Portuguese folklore dance group, our language, our culture, all of these things that we can be thankful for. So the list goes on and on of so many things that we're grateful for, especially the founders of this parish, those Portuguese immigrants who immigrated in the late 60s and early 70s, who were the founders of this parish, who with great sacrifice made all of this really possible, and it's without their hard work that we would not be here today. And so hopefully, as we look back over these past 50 years, we can be grateful for so many blessings in this community, how God has touched our lives over the years, the friendships that we've made, the sacraments we've received, saying goodbye to our loved ones. So much of our lives, especially the important moments of our lives, are celebrated here at this parish and in this parish community. So I think this, what's beautiful about this book is it really commemorates and gives a tribute to the founders of our parish and really the past 50 years of work that has been given to this parish to give greater glory to God, especially all of the clergy who've worked here over the years, the founders, the two founding priests of this parish, Father Yves Rocha and Father Zé Carlos, and then over the years, different priests who served our parish, and most recently Father Manuel Souza, who was here for 36 years. So many things to be thankful for, and I think this book does a great job of putting all of that together in one thing that we can then cherish and have and look at and be reminded of so many blessings that we have received. And just a word of gratitude on my own part, especially to Father Manuel Souza for really having the vision and the initiative of beginning this project. I know that this was something that he'd been thinking about for many years, and then really finally came to fruition in the past few years. And then also to Maria Cardi, who really was able to gather all of the information and put pen to paper. So thank you also, Maria, for your writing, your dedication to this project as well. Also, with that, words of gratitude to Tony Goulart, really, who spent lots of time, hours and hours, selecting photos, formatting, and then working with the publisher to put this together. So thank you, Tony, for your dedication and your work. And also to Tony and Mary Borba, who also really helped in this project, selecting photos, going through our parish archives, and I know that there were others involved in this project. Also, those who helped to put on this reception, Tony and Mary Borba, and all of the helpers that made this reception possible. And also, finally, to our sponsors, the sponsors who donated generously to also help cover the costs of putting this book together. So just my words of gratitude to all of you who are here this morning, all of those who contributed countless hours the past few years to making this project possible. We express, at least on behalf of the parish, express our deepest gratitude to all of you who have contributed to this project. Thank you very much, and I hope all of you are able to enjoy this book in the years to come, and will be able to pass that on to future generations. Thank you.
I think Father Larry finally has a competitor for height, and we'll introduce him later. That's Tony, but it's not me. Our next speaker is Father Manuel Souza. As all of us know, he doesn't even need an introduction, but I will do one. He was a pastor here, as Father Larry said, for 36 years. And, I'm sure all of you, who've been here, who are here, have attended Masses, know him very well. He will always, I think, be remembered for spearheading the construction of the new church. He was born in São Jorge in 1952, making him 4 years older than me. In 1963, he left São Jorge to enroll in a seminary in the island of Terceira, and 5 years later he came to California to join his mother and his siblings, and what a remarkable story that is. And it's published in another book, so you can read that as well. He actually enrolled in Ceres High School and then Modesto Junior College. And in May 1972, he made the decision to go back to the seminary here in the Bay Area, and was ordained in June 1980. He served as parochial vicar in St. Bernard's in Tracy. And in 1985, he felt called to serve abroad, so he went to the Shalom community outside of Lisbon, and 2 months later to Fortaleza, Brazil, and then São Paulo in Brazil. But in December of '86, he returned to California, now convinced that he wanted to be a diocesan priest. And in January, he was appointed co-administrator of this parish. And I will let him tell you the rest of the story because we're on a tight schedule. So, Father Manuel.
Hello, everyone. I give thanks and praise to God for having called me from the generation of the official founders of this community to entrust Our Lady Assumption, this beloved community, to future generations through the hands of his chosen one, Father Lourenço Amorim Machado, Larry. I wish him much joy and abundant fruits in his priestly ministry among you. I'm especially grateful, and I want to say this publicly, for the priests who are at the origin of this parish community, which began at Sacred Heart, Turlock. Father Manuel Alvernaz invited Father José Carlos and Eva Rocha to serve at Sacred Heart in Turlock starting on March 1st, 1969. This miracle of grace would direct me eventually to the priesthood, and would also lead others later also to the priesthood, married diaconate, to the seminary in the following decades. I believe I pray there'll be more seminarians coming forth here, I'm sure. I'm eternally grateful to the three priests. Lord, grant eternal rest to Monsignor Emmanuel Alvarez and Father Jose Carlos. I visited Monsignor Eva Rocha yesterday in Tracy and took him a few copies of the book. We went through it together for almost an hour. I could see his joy and gratitude. There was a strong emotion in his face and voice. I thank them from the heart, holding back tears. I find it refreshing that this community was founded with the work of so many young people. I saw so many young people at church this morning, and I give thanks to God that this community will continue to be young, and it will continue to bring many to Christ in the Central Valley. In the last decade, I heard various voices expressing a longing and a plea. Let us preserve our common memories in a beautiful book. Yes, with elegant prose and beautiful photos. If we don't do it now, will it ever be done? And I kept hearing and I kept longing for that to happen. I just didn't realize exactly what I was getting into, and it far exceeds anything you can imagine in terms of numbers of hours, by the hundreds. And so I'm so glad that we were able to come through the book. I believe the Blessed Mother led me to Tony Goulart and the Portuguese Heritage Publications in January of 2023. Immediately he was on board with all his experience and skills. He directed me to Maria Cunha Carty, an experienced writer. She and husband Larry came on board with immense dedication, perseverance, discipline, and skill. Months later, when the editorial phase was upon us, Mary Borba, with the assistance of Antonio, came to our aid with hundreds of hours of work to help Maria Carty and Tony Goulart put the book together. It went to the printers in June of 2024. I am so grateful to them. As Father Larry asked me to continue this project with the group, and I did after my retirement, which is not really a retirement. And I'm grateful for the support and help of the parish and finance councils at the time, and of the planning committee for the 50th anniversary celebration for their support and help in gathering the research materials and photos. I'm grateful to the parish staff for their support and service to the community, and also for Father Larry to support and decide to continue the project. I believe you'll enjoy the book of memories, to which were added about 700 photos, spanning decades, and seeking to also provide an audio-visual of the text, seeking to show the rich religious and cultural activities of the parish and the many beautiful faces of the community. I wish to thank Portuguese Heritage Publications, photographers and sponsors. The list of the name of the 40 sponsors are at the beginning of the book. They made an expensive book affordable. They did it with no questions asked. They're invited to take their complimentary copies. Above all, I wish to praise and give glory to God. This book is about His graces and blessings. It deserves all of this and much more. Let us bless God's Mother always. May God bless all of you.
Let me now introduce to you the author of the book, Maria Cunha Carty. I have, as I was typing this a couple of days ago, I kept wanting to say McCarthy. And I talked to Larry today, and he says, you're not the first one. Everybody wants to do that. So I hope I don't slip and do that. Maria is a native of Beta in St. George Island. She came to the United States or California in 1960, has a BA in Spanish from San Francisco State, and 2 master's degrees, one in Spanish from UC Berkeley, and one in Applied Linguistics from Northern Illinois University. She contributed to the book on the Holy Ghost Festa, which was led by Tony Goulart, who's here. She authored the book on the history of the IAS Fest in San Jose. She also published her nephew's autobiography entitled True Grit on Wheels. And I didn't write this because I didn't know this until today when I spoke to Larry. But her nephew has cerebral palsy. The wheels are the wheels on his wheelchair. And the interesting thing is this book became a top seller in its category on Amazon. So it must have been a really inspiring work. She also researched the Portuguese-American custom of having queens in the festa. And I have some news for you guys. This is something that was invented in the United States. Just like fortune cookies. There's no fortune cookies in China. There were no queens in the Azores. Now there are. It's spilling over. It's, bad influences from the United States. She currently resides with her husband of 54 years in Oakdale. I actually spoke to him, found out just down the street from where my in-laws used to live. After having lived, I think he said a decade in Lake Tahoe, and I wonder whatever possessed you to leave Lake Tahoe, but that's another story. So please welcome Maria Carty.
Good morning. The previous speakers have said so much about me, I don't have to tell you anything else, okay? So that's it. I just know that I love my Portuguese heritage, and I'm very proud to be another Georgiense from the other side of the island, but anyhow, Father Manuel touched on the history of the church, so I think I'm not going to go there because he knows a lot more than I do. But my heritage is similar to most of those who founded the Portuguese Cultural Center, in that I am a native of São Jorge. A lot of them were from Terceira and São Jorge. Now, why did I call the book Our Lady of the Assumption, A Journey of Faith and Audacity? Because in the early 1970s, as Father explained, this young group of people decided that they wanted to build a Portuguese cultural center in Turlock with its own Catholic church, where they could practice their faith, their Catholic faith, as well as their religious festivals, as they had done in the Azores. And I'm sure a lot of you here are of Azorean descent, and you know how we love our saints, and we love our festas. Anyway, at that time, a lot of Portuguese in the community believed that building another Portuguese Catholic church in California, as had a number of Catholic churches been built in California, in places like San Jose and Oakland, and places like that, they believed that it was an impossibility. It could not be done. But what I discovered after my research, after reading all the bulletins that I couldn't read, it's that they had an intense faith and conviction so strong that it made it possible for the impossible to become the miracle that today is the magnificent church of Our Lady of the Assumption. Whether you like a modern church or a traditional church, to me, this church is gorgeous in every respect. Considering that I had been a city girl most of my life, my husband and I met in San Francisco, we went to Chicago, we lived in the Bay Area for a number of years, and that I had never lived in the San Joaquin Valley. until recently, how did I come to write the history of a church I had never seen or knew it existed? Well, it was Tony's introduction, as Father said. And so Father Manuel commissioned me, actually he invited me to try to write the history of Our Lady of the Assumption. This was done at the time that the 50th anniversary was approaching. He requested, now listen to his request, and any of you who've done any kind of writing, listen to this. He requested that I research and complete the manuscript within 6 months, which I did, and he didn't think I could. Our Lady of the Assumption, I know, was with me all along. I worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. And my husband can attest to that because he never got any comida de panela for a long time. Comida de panela is pot food, is cooked food, as opposed to sandwiches and take out. Once the manuscript, I'm going to give you an idea what it's like to write this book. And Tony, I know I talk too much, so you just get your finger up there next, okay? So once the manuscript was completed, it was sent to several people associated with the parish, including a very competent editor, Mary Borba, as well as editors of fact. Editors of fact are people that look at my facts and see if I've made mistakes, which they found a few. I expected that. So Deacon John Fontes Souza and Antonio Borba, all founders and leaders of the Portuguese Cultural Center from the beginning, were my editors. The history of this magnificent temple, that is Our Lady of the Assumption, is really the story of a church community of deep, deep faith, steadfast courage, and tenacity against all odds, and I cannot stress that. Because from my readings of bulletins and what they did, that's how I discovered this, and I'm amazed. And I might add that at great personal sacrifice to themselves and their families, many of whom are still around. Of course, as we know, the two missionaries, Father Carlos Vieira Simplicio, he was only 32 years old. And Father Rocha, imagine, 26 years old. These two very young missionaries, they were really missionaries, although priests as well, along with a group of about 100 young people, founded the Portuguese Cultural Center in 1972. And these were all young people. Some of these boys and girls were as young as 14 years of age, and a few were 20 or older. Finally, there was their benefactress, Mrs. Maria de Jesus Martins. Without her generosity and financial largesse, your beautiful church may not have come to fruition as it did, or when it did. The Portuguese Cultural Center emerged as Our Lady of the Portuguese at first, that's what it was called, Our Lady of the Portuguese, and later, Our Lady of the Assumption of the Portuguese. Now, if you're curious why it was named Our Lady of the Portuguese, read the book. I think I want you to buy some books. The two priests were very different in personality and temperament, and it comes across in the bulletins. Nobody said this to me. This is what I discovered as I read. But they complemented one another. Oh, I'm sorry. Father Manuel did tell me that they complemented one another. I invite you to read the book to understand how they guided the youth to accomplish their impossible dream. It's really an amazing story. Young lay leaders such as João Fontes Souza, Father Manuel's brother, and Antonio Borba, both under 21 years of age, along with Antonio Henrique Carvalho and 9 others, committed themselves to the financial responsibility for the mortgage payments on the property that was purchased to build the Portuguese Cultural Center. Imagine, you're 20 years old, 21, 19, like João Fontes Souza, and you were about to get married, and you took on this enormous responsibility. Now, they didn't pay each month, they didn't pay a mortgage each month. It was divided among the 12. Again, if you want to read the story, pick up a book. Where did I find the information to write the narrative? And this is very important. My sources include reading all of the church bulletins available since the beginning of the church up to the 50th anniversary. That was 50 years of bulletins. And to do this, I was reading in Portuguese, I've been translating into English, and I knew I was bound to make mistakes. You can't do that quickly and do it correct all the time. So I found a few errors in the manuscript, as did the editors, and I'm grateful for that. In addition to the bulletins, I also read Portuguese and English language newspapers that had articles about the church. I read official documents such as mortgage deeds and stuff like that of the parish. I read books that reference the church history, which of course the one that I really used a lot was the church book, because Father Manuel had an article there about his beloved church, and so I consulted that to make sure that what I read was correct. And what else? Yes, I love Azorean history. If you want to know anything about the Azores, well, not everything, but a lot of stuff. I love Azorean history, so I read some Azorean history books. In addition, I consulted, and this is very important, Deacon John Fontes Souza's, he calls them notes, that he took contemporaneously, that he wrote contemporaneously about the first 8 years of the Church of Our Lady of the Assumption, the Portuguese. This was extremely important because the bulletins were like the skeleton of the church history, but things like Father Manuel's book and the Deacon notes really filled in the bones with meat, and I'm grateful for that. Naturally, I consulted articles on the web, especially about the lives of saints. What do I know about saints? And there are so many saints that Father Manuel asked me to write about, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to write about these saints? But anyway, I did research on the internet, and I found that the saints are fascinating people. Read about the saints, their lives. On the web is where I also found information about the American priests, which the parish had very little information on, but thankfully the internet gave me a lot of information. In the web, I also discovered an unusual but important document about Our Lady of the Assumption Church. That document, or this document, was inserted into the United States Congressional Record. This is the United States Congressional Record by Jeff Denham, a United States California State Representative. This, to me, was just such an important finding for me, that he would take the time to insert that into the Congressional Record. And this is, to me, a great honor. I don't know about you, but I think it is for me. Countless, but most importantly, anonymous individuals. And there were countless and anonymous. They contributed to the success of this parish over the decades. In the spirit of trying to be as objective as I could be, because, everyone has opinions, blah, blah, blah. I chose what they call the writer's protocol of citing in my book only names in the public domain, such as bulletins, documents, newspapers, etc., etc. Or occasionally Father Manuel said something, it might have stuck in there, but it was, all of it was like that. Because I did not want to offend anyone, I didn't want to exclude anyone, and the only way that I could do, since I don't know anybody in the parish other than my cousin here, I couldn't do it. So to be objective, I had to do it this way. In addition to written materials that I also consulted Father Manuel. He was kind enough to spend endless hours reciting the history of his beloved church. I interviewed five other people, 2 of whom were founding members since the beginning. And those are the people I had. So I interviewed them. In many ways, the founding of this parish is unique. First, because it was founded as a Portuguese cultural center. I don't know of any Portuguese church that was founded as a cultural center, with its little chapel. Secondly, the founders were very young and penniless. I wanted to use the word, a very fancy word, but I said, no, I'm going to use that one. Sem tostão. Also, by and large, they were recently arrived immigrants from the Azores, again from the island, mostly from the islands of São Jorge and Estela, but we're very inclusive. We like I love all the islands. I've been to all of them, and I love them all. This book is not only the history of the parish, but of an immigrant church community who worked themselves into exhaustion, and I mean that, to achieve their dream. If you read the book, you see how exhausted they were after several years. They did this to achieve their Portuguese cultural center and their own church. My work was written not only for current parishioners, which I think you should read, but because it's an interesting story, but for future generations of Americans of Portuguese descent, as well as for parishioners of all ethnicities in the Turlock area. On a personal level, allow me the luxury of thanking my husband. Without his moral support, infinite patience, and a generous spirit, much more generous than mine, I would not have had the strength to keep going. When the waters got rough and deadline approached at midnight, and I had to turn it in by, I think it was June the 30th. Finally, I invite you to purchase Our Lady of the Assumption, A Journey of Faith and Audacity. As they said, 700 pages, so artistically and professionally presented by Tony Ward, which is the way he does things. He doesn't do things halfway. Complement and enliven my text. Many of you will find your image or that of a loved one in the photo section. All my work was free, gratis. Even though I own the rights of the book, which is what authors do, it pleases me very much that all the profits revert to the parish of Our Lady of the Assumption. Now that we are in this Christmas season, this book makes a great gift. Please leaf through the pages of mine if you want to. If you like what you read and see, do consider buying one for your mother, your father, a child, a friend, or even an enemy. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be available after the presentation.
Thank you, Maria. Larry, I have a recommendation. Time to learn to cook. Oh, that was her other husband, okay. So we're working our way down the table, and our next person is Antonio, or better known as Tony Goulart, a native of Pico Island, born in 1954. I recently saw photos on Facebook of his 70th birthday celebration, so I'm not revealing any unknown secrets. You know, it's public information. He enrolled in the seminary in, as I learned today, I thought it was Terceira, but he actually spent seminary in San Miguel and then in Terceira. In 1974, he came to California. He has a BA and a master's from the University of San Francisco. He was and is a successful businessman who had his own drywall company in the Bay Area. He was the founder of the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce, and he was a co-founder of the Portuguese Heritage Publications of California. They're the ones that are spearheading the publication of this book. And I will have here to give some personal note because he, I think personally, I have to attest that he has done more to document the Zorian Portuguese presence in this state than anyone else that I know. If it's written down, there's a good chance Tony had a hand in it. And so he, for that alone, he deserves our utmost appreciation and gratitude. Please welcome Tony Goulart.
Good morning. Dear Parochial Administrator Father Larry, who had to leave because we are up on Mass time. Dear Consul General of Portugal, Dr. Filipe Camalheira. Dear Pastor Emeritus, Father Manuel Fontes Souza. Dear friend and author Maria Cunha Carti, parishioners and friends of Our Lady of the Assumption Parish. Welcome to the long-awaited and overdue presentation of the book on the history of the first 50 years of this community. I would submit that for most of you in this hall today, you probably are unaware of the team effort necessary to write, publish a book of this type, format, and its extensive research content. As a non-volunteer organization, Portuguese Heritage has had the privilege of publishing many books without ever charging for the expenses it took to put them together. Our goal has always been to preserve history and not to make a living or profit off of it. We are honored that for the first time an organization from the rich and prosperous Central Valley, considered PHPC, to publish a book with the same or superior quality of those who usually charge for it. We are grateful for their audacity. Portuguese Heritage closes its publishing cycle of 24 years with this proverbial cherry on the cake with Our Lady of the Assumption, A Journey of Faith and Audacity. Personally, it was quite an enriching and learning experience as I was confronted with challenges of a new design and concept. Also, I had the opportunity to expand and deepen friendships and appreciate the invaluable cooperation of all those involved in making it happen. I will always treasure the trust and friendship confided in me. Father Manuel Souza had presented this idea to me over a decade ago when Portuguese Heritage Publication published a comprehensive book titled Power of the Spirit, A Portuguese Journey of Building Faith in Churches in California. However, it would take another decade until we revisit the subject. I am grateful to him for believing that I could lead the project. I knew what he had in mind, but I must admit that at times I felt very hesitant whether I could deliver on his expectations. Although he often emphasized that he did not want this book to be about him or to be portrayed as a central personality, it was only fair and appropriate that he was recognized for his enviable individual human qualities and his dedicated service to this community for over 36 years. It's no coincidence or by chance that he was also the force and the mastermind behind the construction of the new church, the heart of this community, a wonderful architectural masterpiece, and one of the most beautiful monuments ever built by the Portuguese diaspora around the world. Our community will forever be indebted to Father Manuel Souza, who, by the way, is also an excellent photographer. Father Larry, whom I met for the first time in the parish complex parking lot in the morning of our first project meeting, took an even bigger leap of faith on entrusting the process, and after a 2-hour meeting showed unconditional support and gave us the green light without even needing a proverbial handshake. It's with great sense of appreciation that I see one of the parish's members become the new helmsman of OLA. This project was particularly difficult because it was originally started by another author, and maybe for that reason there were some hesitation and at times lack of cooperation with the author and researcher Maria Cardi. Some believed this book would never see the light of day. But with determination and complete dedication, the labor of love was completed, and thus an important piece of the history of the Portuguese in California is being preserved for future generations. This unique human and spiritual experience lived by the members of Our Lady of the Assumption Church community in Turlock is a prototype and the model for any Catholic community. This story needed to be documented and saved for posterity. My friend, the talented and experienced author Maria Carty, worked tirelessly with husband Larry, always by her side, for many months, and compiled information and completed the beautiful and comprehensive manuscript of the history of Ola, with the assistance of Father Manuel Fontes Souza, who provided access to Ola church archives and other documents, and Mary Borba, a co-founder and dedicated member of the community, who edited the manuscript. I did not keep count of how many times Mary read the manuscript, but I can assure you that she does not have to read it again. Her attention to detail and her perfectionism were invaluable. Thanks also to her husband, Antonio Borba, the first president of Portuguese Cultural Center, the seed for this parish, for important feedback and advice. I must emphasize Maria Carty's difficult work and their unbiased perspective. I can honestly attest that she was aware of the parish's path not always being smooth, and that its bumps and controversies. However, she was able to treat its history in a fair, objective, just, and respectful manner. The history of this parish is much larger than some of the issues it had to overcome at times. This is a history of a generous, dedicated, and a superb community of deep faith. Today, this parish has evolved into a more encompassing and embracing of other cultures and nationalities than what it was in its beginning, when it was almost exclusively Portuguese. Maria Carty's word tell the unique story of an audacious few who decided to try a new way of living their lives in faith. However, it is often said an image can complete and complement the story. And in that context, an image is sometimes worth 1,000 words. This book, besides narrating the journey of a community of faith, is completed by many photos that illustrate and tell the rest of the story. Once again, Mary Borba's deep knowledge of the community was undescribably as tedious as valuable in finding and selecting the photographs for the book. Portuguese Heritage Publication is deeply indebted to hundreds of private individuals who search for photos about the story. Thousands of photos were collected from the Ola Parish Archives by the members of the 50th Anniversary Committee, Elder Souza, Father Manuel Souza, and from many other contributing individuals. Many of the parish events in history were documented by professional photographers. All these individuals unanimously, understanding the difficulty and insurmountable task we were faced with to properly identify their work, were humble and kind enough to accept a general acknowledgement. This is an uncommon gesture of goodwill and generosity. PHPC will forever thank them for making our jobs to illustrate this book possible. It is quite impressive and overwhelming, especially for most people who are not members of this parish, the number of activities Our Lady of the Assumption sponsors, carries, and supports. But allow me to suggest starting a small museum or a repository of the important photos, documents, and artifacts that make up the rich history of this parish. It is imperative before those historical pieces are lost or scattered. I would like to acknowledge the presence of our newly arrived Consul General of Portugal, Dr. Felipe Ramalheiro. A couple of weeks ago, when we first met, I mentioned this book presentation, and he requested that I send him an invitation for the event, which I did simply out of courtesy. It's extremely gratifying to see that he chose to be here with us today, validating the importance he attributes to and the respect he holds for this important community. It is a remarkable presence of a man who had to drive himself about 5 hours to attend the book presentation about one of the most vital and vibrant Portuguese American communities of Central Valley. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the Portuguese media who interviewed Maria Cardi and Father Manuel Souza about the book in this event, particularly Euclides Alves of Los Açores, Álvaro Aguiar, Batista Vieira, and Regina Silveira of KLBS-KSQQ. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of my friend José Ávila, editor of Portuguese Tribune, the only Portuguese newspaper west of the Mississippi, for his coverage of this event and for several free ads and articles featured in the past few weeks in his cherished newspaper. In closing, I thank you for the support of your presence and for all those who prepared the hall, the refreshments, and the foods for this event. I recognize the support of the parish staff during the process of preparing this book. I thank our MC, Dr. Armando Costa, for keeping us in track and staying the course. I'd like to acknowledge the generous sponsors whose contributions were vital to offset some of the printing costs of the book. I wished, as it was originally intended, that this had been a bilingual edition. However, time and other important constraints led us to opt for an English version only. That difficult decision was mainly my responsibility, considering the value of the book as a future reference. As an amateur publisher, I embrace this challenging task of continuing to preserve the history of the Portuguese presence in California with all my heart and soul. I'm proud of the final product and for being associated with the team who envisioned and made this book a reality. I sincerely hope you enjoy reading and browsing through the many photos depicting not all, but many dedicated members of this parish community. Considering all the beautiful work this community has been able to accomplish, as author Maria Carti so eloquently wrote on her closing chapter of the book, and I paraphrase, "Had Our Lady been visible, she would have smiled." Congratulations to all of you for setting the example in carrying the torch of faith and culture. This is your history. This is your legacy. Please pass it on to the future generations.
Manuel Freitas, could you go in the kitchen and bring Mary Borba out, please? Oh, here she is. Okay, I didn't even notice she was hidden over here. I thought she was hiding in the kitchen. Okay. So, it's hard to follow Tony Blood, not only because he's a tall person, but his accomplishments are so many that, but he, I think, did what I had here next to do, which was to thank a special person, because without her, I'm not sure the book would have had what it has today, and that is Mary Borba. Think about 1 year of your life, but particularly from January through the end of May, where it was every day, at least 8 hours a day. And I know because she kept calling and sending messages to my wife about this, that, and the other to confirm things. Because Mary spent numerous hours selecting photos, proofreading manuscripts, and reviewing many other things, more than I know because I was not involved in a project. And we all know that there will be critiques, some positive, some negative, but know that everyone who worked on this book worked their darnest to make sure that this book presented a fair history of all that transpired in the 50 years of this parish. So, to Mary Borba, let's give her gratitude for what she has done. And Tony also thanks, so I'm just very quickly, José Ávila from the Portuguese Tribune. He used to live in Modesto, but he decided to go back to San Jose and now has a long drive to get here. So we appreciate an Elder de Souza who is putting together the video that you will be able to see on YouTube. We have one more special guest. He has a degree from the University of Coimbra, where he studied law. Then he went on to the Catholic University of Portugal, where he also has a postgraduate degree in political science, and then an executive MBA from the University of Geneva. So already I can tell you he speaks far more languages than any of us in here probably. I'm not going to go through his whole curriculum because it is quite long, but to tell you that he was secretary at the Embassy of Portugal at the UN and the World Trade Organization in Geneva, deputy head of mission of the Embassy of Portugal in Ottawa, Canada, and most recently he was head of cabinet of the Secretary of State for International Affairs of Portugal, and now he is our Consul General of Portugal in San Francisco. So please welcome Dr. Felipe Ramalheira.
Good morning to you all. I promise I will be brief. I must say that all the interventions I've heard so far were pretty amazing and really highlight the importance and the timelessness of this book. It is for me a great honor to be here today with this beautiful congregation for the launching of what I believe is a very deserved and timely praise of the parish of Our Lady of Assumption in Turlock. I must confess that I haven't read the book, but what I know so far from this amazing Portuguese community, I must say that I find the title, A Journey of Faith and Audacity, really spot on. Faith is an intemporal attribute of the Portuguese in California, and if I may even take it a little bit further, its very cement, the cohesiveness of our community, its solidarity, generosity, kindness and fortitude are a product of its deep Catholic roots and traditions which endure to this day. At the same time, audacity. As Fernando Pessoa, perhaps the most famous Portuguese poet of the 20th century, wrote in one of his most celebrated works, Deus quer, o homem sonha, a obra nasce. Or in English, God wills it, man dreams it, the masterpiece is born. The Church of Our Lady of the Assumption is precisely the materialization of this idea, the product of man's will and faith. The Church was inspired by Fathers José Carlos and Evo Rocha, who sought to establish a place to celebrate religion and traditions of the Portuguese. Masses were held in a small prefabricated house built on 5 acres of land in 1972. The parish hall was built soon afterwards to serve as a venue for worship, education and cultural exchanges, and the rest, as you know, is history. Today, the new Church of Our Lady of Assumption is the highest symbol of a thriving parish that preserves the religious and cultural heritage of successive generations of Azorian Portuguese that sought a different life in the Central Valley. It is a space where personal and collective memories are interwoven through ceremonies like baptisms, weddings, and funerals. Indeed, churches symbolize timelessness, spirituality, and the persistence of the human experience. They stand as silent observers of human drama witnessing in the silence and coldness of their stones and stained glass windows the collective successes and failures of men. Churches are physical anchors of memory. They often outlast civilizations, societies, or communities that have built them. The preservation of churches and their history is, for this very reason, also a way to honor our ancestors, their beliefs, and their way of life. Our Lady of the Assumption has become much more than a Portuguese church in Turlock. It has grown beyond its boundaries. It is the legacy of our community to this amazing city, a legacy which we should all be very proud of. I would like to congratulate the author, Maria Cunha Carti, for this outstanding work, and Tony Goulart for his commitment to the permanence of the memory of Portuguese in California. Thank you.
And I we're done. So we're now going to proceed to the sales of the book. There's 2 tables. The far back are for those people who are, and you get, I forget how many copies, but you have a set number of copies. So if you are a sponsor, go back to that table and get your copies. The closest table here is for those who want to purchase books. They are $20 each. I assure you that is not the cost of production. It's far more than that, but it's a token donation. And if you want, the authors will be here and will be willing to autograph your copy of the book. And as you get your books, go to the back table. There's wonderful hors d'oeuvres, and you can